It's Our Story. Stephen Brown, Louisville, Kentucky.
I first saw Ed, I think. I knew about him, but I first saw him at this actually wonderful conference called Beyond Survival that was held in Denver in the early 1980s. I don't remember the exact year. And what was really wonderful about that was, first of all, the conference, as I said, was wonderful because I had just started at an independent living center. I was beginning to be aware of how I, as a person with a disability, fit into a rights movement. And this conference was very specifically called Beyond Survival because what had happened with a lot of people at that point was they had their disability or they had been injured and they had literally survived. They had survived in case of an injury. But what wasn't happening at that point on a systemic level was that people weren't getting into society, into the culture. So this conference was trying to take people beyond surviving and going into that. And Ed spoke at the conference, and I actually don't remember anything he said, but what I remember is how powerful his presentation was. And I think I don't know, I was pretty shy in those days, so I don't know if I actually went up and introduced myself. But here is this guy. He was kind of a big guy in a huge wheelchair, a huge motorized wheelchair. And he has this cord dangling out of his mouth, which is the respirator cord, so that's how he's breathing. And because of the respirator, he's talking fairly slowly and deliberately. And I'd never seen anybody like that before. So just seeing somebody like Ed made a huge impression on me. So that was the first time I saw him. And then about 9 years later, I went to work at the World Institute on Disability in Oakland, which he and two other people started. So he actually became, he wasn't my direct boss, but he was, because he was the president of WID, he was everybody's boss who was there. And actually, WID was this really interesting place at that time, because you'd go down one hallway, and, well, hallway is a bit of an exaggeration, but you go to one office, and there was Simi Litvak, who was the expert in personal assistance. At that time, she knew everything there was to know about personal assistance. And you'd go down another hallway, and there was Deborah Kaplan, and she knew everything there was to know about what at that time was telecommunications and disability. It's broadened into technology since then. And you'd go down another hallway and there'd be Judy Heumann, and Judy knew literally everything about everything related to disability, and it's not an exaggeration to say that. And then there was Ed, and one of the first things actually that Ed did when I got there, because when I moved there, I moved from Oklahoma to California, and I didn't know anybody in Berkeley. So one of the first things that Ed did was invite me to go to a baseball game with him, once he found out I was a baseball fan. And so Ed and Lee, his son, and I piled into his van, which had a ramp at the back of the van, a lift. And so we piled into his van, and we went to an Oakland A's game. And the, the other kind of funny thing about Ed and I is that we'd have these gatherings at WID, these lunch gatherings and other kinds of gatherings where people would talk about work and different kinds of issues. And I don't know if you're familiar with this, but a lot of people in California, maybe even you in California, tend to be health conscious. And so people would bring fruit and vegetables and other kinds of healthy foods, and I always had my potato chips with me. And Ed loved potato chips, so he'd always have me feed him some potato chips. And the other thing I have to say about that is all these health-conscious WID folks never left me any potato chips to take home.
The It's Our Story project is a national effort to make disability history public and accessible. Visit us at www.itsourstory.org or on the It's Our Story project YouTube channel.